What do you mean?
I believe is the name. I think that's the name of the channel. What do you mean with an exclamation point and a question mark?
Brace yourself.
Welcome back. One thing that's been on the top of the what do you mean to do list has been privatization, which you might have been able to tell from the video I've done on prisons and such. Well, I've had at the very top Mercenaries and privatizing war, and I'm kind of glad I've put it off until now because a fantastic interview by one of my favorite journalists is ideal. It's done a lot of the heavy lifting. So I'll play about 5 clips from that and we can enjoy Mehdi Hasan, a journalist for Al Jazeera and The Intercept, and has been on various other shows and does amazing work. We can enjoy him absolutely destroy Erik Prince, the founder and former CEO of Blackwater, the private security company.
It may very well be one of the most controversial companies in our country's history.
Blackwater USA has been called the largest private army in the world.
A jury in Washington convicted 4 former Blackwater security guards in the 2007.
My guest tonight is the controversial founder and former CEO of Blackwater, Erik Prince.
You do admit that Blackwater personnel have shot and killed innocent civilians, don't you?
I disagree with that.
Branded a war profiteer and a super mercenary by his critics, Prince's firm made over $1 billion out of the so-called war on terror. It also highlighted the clear danger of using private contractors on the battlefield. And yet now he's back on the scene, trying to privatize the war in Afghanistan by offering to replace US and NATO troops there with his own private security force. But will handing the war to Prince really help end it?
I'm Mehdi Hasan, and I've come here to the Oxford Union to go head-to-head with Erik Prince, a former Navy SEAL and the founder of Blackwater. I'll challenge him on war crimes in Iraq, his plans for a private army in Afghanistan, and his loyal support for President Donald Trump.
Yeah, about that unsurprising and very convenient support for Trump that he has, because his sister is Betsy DeVos, which is the United States Secretary of Education. She's well into charter schools, but that's a whole nother video. So the ties run deep. And the next clip I'll play will lay out a lot of facts of the wrongdoings of Blackwater. And I also will put up a article from 2007 by Independent to give you some more information.
The company did exactly what the U.S. government asked us to do, which was to protect diplomats, reconstruction officials visiting UN or other congressional delegations. We did more than 100,000 missions. No one under our care was ever killed or injured. And people try to characterize the company as overly aggressive. Less than 0.5% of all those missions resulted in a discharge of a firearm. In an era when you had lots of violence in the capital. Yes. I mean, Baghdad really was the center of gravity of the insurgency. And so we had 41 of our men were lost in action doing that mission.
So you mentioned there that the US government asked you to do a job and you did it. You mentioned that you lost men on your watch. What you didn't mention is that you also killed a lot of people. You say, well, percentages is great. Let's talk about individual cases. In 2005, Blackwater guards fired 70 rounds into an Iraqi civilian's car, forcing the State Department to investigate. In 2006, according to leaked Pentagon documents, Blackwater guards fired indiscriminately at Iraqi civilians, killing, among others, an ambulance driver. In 2007, Blackwater guards shot and killed 14 Iraqi civilians in what's been called the Nisour Square Massacre, or Baghdad's Bloody Sunday. That is the record that a lot of people around the world remember when they hear the name Blackwater.
Sure, and when you do 100,000 missions, it's easy to take some things out of context. But remember, you had many thousands of insurgents actively trying to kill Americans, and not just American servicemen, but the most newsworthy Americans there, diplomats. And when the State Department asked you to drive...
But the people I'm mentioning weren't insurgents. You killed, at Nisour Square, your men killed a mother and son on their way to an appointment, a doctor and her son. They killed a 9-year-old boy, shot him in the head.
Sadly, the insurgents don't wear uniforms. They would drive ambulances filled with explosives. They would drive...
So your men thought they were shooting at insurgents?
A car bomb doesn't give you much time to decide.
There was no car bomb at Nisour Square in 2007.
Actually, right before the Nisour Square event, there was.
Not at Nisour Square, there was no car bomb.
Excuse me. Less than 5 minutes before that event happened, there was a large car bomb that went off where there was a protective team of ours protecting a USAID official. And sadly, that car bomb went off. The team decided to move through there. And a support team went to block the traffic circle so that the fleeing team could move through smoothly and not be ambushed. When the intelligence provided by the State Department and the U.S. government says, be on the lookout for a white Kia, okay, and all the other cars in the traffic circle stop, except for a white Kia, sadly, sometimes the guys have a split second to make that decision.
Of course, and Blackwater say the white Kia stopped. As you well know, because you've discussed this far more than I have, all of the eyewitnesses there say that there was no white Kia heading towards you. The US colonel who turned up on the day said that there was no enemy activity involved. He said it was a criminal event and an excessive shooting. A US court of law in December prosecuted one of your men for first-degree murder for killing Ahmed Rubai and his mother at Nisour Square.
Yes.
And 3 other, hold on, let me finish. 3 other men were prosecuted for manslaughter. 4 of your men, murder and manslaughter, in not Iraqi courts, US courts.
That's right. They prosecuted them 4 times, and they finally got a conviction. The first time it was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct.
Guilty. They found him guilty.
No. The first time it was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct. The second time it was overturned. The third time it was a mistrial. The federal government finally got them in a DC jury on the 4th time they tried.
DC jury, not a legitimate jury.
I would say a jury of your peers does not really compare to the rest of America. No, that's
okay. Okay, so some juries are legitimate, some not, like so-called judges.
What I also love about this is how Mehdi always mentions the loss of life and what's happened to the people before he talks about the dollar value and how much this all cost. I really like that. And now let's enjoy him punch some more holes through anything Erik Prince has to say.
And they smashed the Taliban in a matter of weeks.
They toppled them, but that's fine. You topple them.
Yes.
But controlling a country requires more than 6,000 people, sure.
Correct. But then the United States repeated the Soviet battle plan. Okay. So I'm not advocating...
What is your battle plan? That 6,000 people can do what 140,000 couldn't?
Sure.
I'm not an expert on maths, but that seems weird.
Well, here's the thing. You have 15,000 U.S. troops there now. There's about 7,000 NATO and another 30,000 contractors. So I'm not advocating a privatization. I'm advocating a rationalization at a significant cost savings.
I'm no expert on math either, and that does seem weird. And now let's have a little more input on how much Blackwater does cost and what they then do with this money.
Blackwater got billions of dollars in U.S. government contracts.
Not billions.
More than $1 billion in U.S. government contracts during that period.
Over 12 years.
And yet a scathing U.S. State Department investigation found that Blackwater, quote, was overbilling the State Department and manipulating personnel records. Its guards were partying, drinking, and even crashed an armored car and saw themselves as, quote, above the law. Pretty damning. The U.S. State Department is saying this about the company they're giving contracts to. Overbilling and manipulating.
We never paid any fines for anything like that. That's a fact.
You paid fines for a lot of things.
The only thing we paid a fine for was an ITAR violation. I'll give you an example.
Sorry, did you say the only thing you paid a fine for? You paid $7.5 million fine in 2012 to settle 17 criminal charges. You paid a $42 million settlement to the State Department in 2010 for illegal arms sales.
2012, I'd already sold the business. I sold it in 2010.
But the cases go back beyond 2010. The criminal charges related to all sorts of things that went back years.
Okay, I've got 2 more bits of sound that should highlight how Blackwater is seen by the government and people of the countries that they've been to and want to go to, and vice versa, how Blackwater Mercenaries and Erik Prince see the people from the countries that they've been to. Pretty intense.
The Afghan government, they don't like your plan. They say it's a non-starter. They say under no circumstances will we allow the war to become a, quote, private-for-profit business. The former Afghan president, Hamid Karzai, said he vehemently opposes your proposal. It's a non-starter.
I think he would say differently if you asked him now.
I literally asked his office on Friday, and they said they're dead against it.
Well, I've talked to other people in his office who disagree with that.
Okay. And the current Afghan government, have they changed their position as well? They said in October, under no circumstances.
I doubt very much that Ashraf Ghani will win in the next election.
So you're waiting for a change of president to get your plan signed off?
Look, here's the thing. If they don't do a plan like this, if there is not a skeletal structure supporting the Afghan forces, the next president's going to wind up like Najibullah did.
The problem is the way you pitched it is, do you think it was helpful to tell the Afghans we're going to be like, quote, the East India Company, which violently ruled India on behalf of the British Empire in the 18th and 19th centuries? Was it wise to talk about having a viceroy in charge of the country? I mean, you're not hiding the fact that this is a colonialist project when you use language like that.
But here's the thing. The United States has no one person that's in charge of Afghan policy. There's nobody that the president can turn to and say, why is Afghanistan after this?
He has a special envoy, Zalmay Khalilzad.
Yeah, sure. That doesn't help. He doesn't control the military. He doesn't control the intelligence funding. He doesn't control policy.
Even if I agree with that, do you think calling someone a viceroy in charge of an East India Company is going to go down well with brown folks?
Mehdi is amazing. Oh, he is my absolute favorite. And I don't know, if this hasn't made a case for why mercenaries are not a good idea and why you probably shouldn't privatize war, then I don't know what will. If the government is traditionally meant to be in charge of it, privatizing it would probably have more problems than not, I think it's safe to say. Okay, one more piece of sound, which is from earlier on in the interview, and probably my favorite from the whole interview, and it's perfect.
I just want to get to what drives you when you kind of come up with these plans to do private security, especially in a lot of these Muslim-majority countries, because you yourself have referred to the people your men were fighting in Iraq as barbarians who crawled out of the sewer. You say in your memoir, these were the chanting barbarians American troops had been sent to liberate?
Sure. People that think it's okay to drive a car bomb into the middle of a square, into the middle of a marketplace, while to attempt to kill an American, and in doing so, they kill dozens and dozens of civilians, absolutely that's barbaric.
Which is true. I think if you refer to terrorists, you call them whatever you want. But you said these were the chanting barbarians American troops had been sent to liberate. You weren't sent to liberate terrorists. Sounds like you're talking about Iraqis.
Sir, look,
It's from your words from your memoir.
the decision of Iraq.
Please.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my half case against mercenaries and privatizing war and half appreciation video for Mehdi Hasan, because he does some fantastic work, especially like this interview with Erik Prince. And war's bad to begin with. Privatizing things usually doesn't end well. So yeah, combining the two is not the best idea. I thoroughly encourage everyone to watch the full interview. I'll have the link below. And there'll be links to everything else to do with What Do You Mean. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.